Hey guys, welcome to my very first music theory video. It is the month of December, so in the holiday spirit, we are going to analyze some of your favorite Christmas songs. So in particular, we're going to look at modulations and some other harmonic tricks in these songs. Firstly, we're going to work on how to hear and identify these modulations. Secondly, we are going to talk about the emotional effect that these modulations have on the listener. And we're going to really try to appreciate the way the composers use these harmonic devices to really aid and sort of go along with the lyrics and the spirit of the song. And going forward from the video, I really want you guys to sort of develop a relationship with each one of these sounds that we're going to encounter. And so what that means is just the more you listen to these sounds, identify them, enjoy them, play them, sing them, sort of let them bounce around in your head, then the more you're going to appreciate them and recognize them in other songs, and then potentially be able to use them maybe in your own composition, your own improvisation, or just to properly accent them or sort of, dig them, if I may use the expression, in your own performance of other people's compositions when you hear these sounds. So anyway, we're going to start off with probably the easiest example, and this is a tune you all know. Let It Snow. This one's by great American songwriting duo Jules Stein, was born Julius Stein, and Sammy Cahn. You might know them from I Fall in Love Too Easily, a classic song from the Great American Songbook. And anyway, here they're in the business of writing a holiday hit song. So I'm going to play the song, and I want you to listen and try to hear where you think there's a modulation. All right? So here we go. Whoops. Etc. We all know how the rest goes. For the astute listeners among you, you'll probably notice that I skipped the repeat of the A section just for time's sake. So there's a couple chords in that first part of the melody, da 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 da. That's called the A section. That definitely sound like they could constitute a modulation. They definitely sort of go a little bit away from the main key. By the way, I'm playing the tune in the key of F, so 1 flat, which is B flat. So let's take a look at one of those chords in the A section and see whether it constitutes a modulation. In particular, you guys might have noticed there's a lot of drama going on there, right? You can hear the yearning of those chords. Dissonance, augmented, a lot of interesting intervals in there, right? And in particular, if you look at the chords I'm playing, so we're supposed to be in F major, but look at this melody actually. So forget about the chords for a moment, but D, D, C, B flat, A, G. In fact, let's solfege that. So in the key of F, this is going to be La, La, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re. Lands very prominently on Re, kind of outlines that little 5-note scale. In this case, Re is G. Let's see if the chords actually hint at G as well. There's an A. Don't worry about this if it's a little bit if the terms are a little challenging, but This is an A half diminished chord, and then this one's a D dominant chord. The important thing to note about these chords is that it includes the note F sharp. That's the leading tone of G, so it's a half step below G. And that note F sharp is not in the key of F. So that is an accidental that we're getting here that is temporarily making G sound sort of like home. So here's what that sounds like. There it is. Na. I almost couldn't find it. Na, na, na. Think of that as being do, ti, do. Check it out. Do, ti, do. That's sort of like a tonicizing cadence. Tonic meaning home key. The thing about it, though, is that it only hits that G minor for just a split second, and then it goes completely off in another direction, back down this circle of fourths progression to F. So it doesn't stay in G minor long enough to be considered a modulation. For a modulation, let's talk about what a modulation is. For a modulation, you definitely need to have a new key center. So you need to have that leading tone. For instance, in this case, the F sharp would be the leading tone of G. But you also need to have some time spent in that new key and then a confirming cadence, which means you get to the key and then you play around. Maybe you go on a little journey and then come back again to that key. So it can't just be a stop on a journey to somewhere else. It has to actually sort of be its own home. You have to sort of do at least one cycle out and then back again. In this case, we're only on that chord for a split second. So that's not the modulation. But listen to what happens after. All right. Less dramatic in terms of the tension and the yearning, but maybe you can feel that sort of paradigm shift, just the general shift that happens as you go into that B section. It feels like, we're going on a journey. Okay, our point of view is shifting, something of that nature. We're doing something different now. That's the bridge of the song, right? So coming into that point, ti, la, sol, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Now I'm going to continue to solfege in the key of F and see what happens. Ti, do, re, mi, re, ti, sol, re, ti, re, do, ti, la, sol, la, ti. Very awkward, right? I'm sort of grimacing because it's hard to do. And that's because it's really accenting notes that you don't expect if you're supposed to be in F. So it's really accenting ti and re and sol instead of like do and mi, for instance. So in the key of F, those notes that I just mentioned are C, E, and G. You might recognize that as the famous C major triad. So listen to this. E, G, G, E, C, G. A lot of E, G, and C. And what do you know? The chord is a C major chord. Now let's listen for the confirming cadence for C major. That's actually a lot of evidence right there, but we won't get into that. Here it is, ready? Now, sing that while I play this. Da, 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 do, ti, do. Pardon me. That's do, ti, do in C major. That gives you the note B natural, which is not in the original key of F. That's the leading tone of C. That's your confirming cadence. So we got to C. Little jazzy chord there, don't worry about that. And then confirming cadence in C major. And then we actually do it again. Da, 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 dee, ra. Here it comes again, but this time it's gonna confirm C, but also serve as a jumping point back to F. Watch this. There's your B natural, da 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 da. That's the do ti, but watch this. Da 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 da. Now, do you hear this? Da. That's B flat. So as soon as I got to the result of that cadence, I didn't, but Jules Stein did, reintroduced that B flat. So basically, as soon as you get to C, when you add the B flat back into that mix, it's directing you back to the key of F. That's a C dominant chord. So listen to what that sounds like. Hear it? Now we're back in the key of F. So we had a lovely modulation to the key of 5, which in this case was C. That's pretty much the simplest modulation you're going to get. There weren't really any complicated chords used to get there. And the key of 5 is only one accidental different from the original key. So in this case, B flat went to B natural. That's a raised fourth. That's a very, very common accidental to find. Okay, now let's try another one. This one is much, much darker of a modulation. So, but it's a beautiful song. Check it out. So nothing happening yet, right? Here we go. Second phrase. Hear it? Etc. Beautiful song, Oh Holy Night. This one is from a different era. It was composed by a Frenchman, Adolphe Adam, around the middle of the 19th century. So Chopin was alive. Beethoven had just died 20 years before. Schubert, all those great early romantic composers were doing their thing at the time. So this is very much more of a romantic harmony. So anyway, let's listen to that crucial moment, and we're going to use solfege to figure out what the heck is happening here. So the second phrase, I'm playing this in B flat major, by the way. Mi, 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 sol, sol, la, la, fa, la, do, sol. Now I deliberately stopped the solfege because I want to talk about it first and see what you guys might be able to come up with. So we do, sol. Now listen to this and see if you can solfege it. So the note that we're ending on is sol. I'll give you that. So do, sol. So we're stepping down from sol. Is it fa? Well, sol to fa is a whole step. Sol, fa, mi, re, do, if you know your scale. Sol, fa, mi, re, do. Listen to this. Da-na. Right? That's the jaws, right? That's a half step. So if we're going a half step down from sol, that's fi. Sharp 4 is not fa, it's fi. Which is the same note that we were dealing with in the previous example, the B natural, right? But now it's in a different key. So now it's E natural, because we're in the key of B flat. Okay, so we're hearing this E natural. Now, if the only thing you knew was that it was in B flat and you were getting an E natural, the most logical thing to conclude would be that we were modulating to F, because E natural is the leading tone of F, just the way B natural was the leading tone of C in the last example. So for instance, that would sound something like this. That's a modulation from B flat to F using the note E natural. But listen to the way it actually goes in Oh Holy Night. Certainly doesn't sound like F major, does it? It's D minor, the saddest of all keys, as they say in Spinal Tap. So it is in fact going to the relative minor of F major, which is D minor. So D minor is also going to have that E natural, just the way F does, because the two keys have the same key signature. But instead, here, E natural is not the leading tone. It's just an extra note that you need in the scale. Here, to actually confirm D minor in the classical sense, we're going to need a C sharp. Let's see if we get it in the harmony. And then we get this lovely sort of Chopin-esque. That's a flat 9 over the A dominant chord. So A, 3rd, 5th, 7th, flat 9. Then that sort of universal lamenting or sighing kind of figure. Da, da, da. Very sad, right? So that's a modulation to the minor 3. Okay? And it's very sad. And the song is, about the journey of humanity being lost in sin and all of this stuff. And that's really that moment. And then listen to how Adolf gets out of it. So the weary world rejoices. Oh, it's just beautiful. I mean, the way he really just gives you that solemn, somber, almost tragic moment, where you're thinking, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? There's no getting out of this. How can we possibly get out of this? And that's a Beethoven move right there. That move is in Moonlight Sonata. We'll get into that in another video. But first, before we move on from this example, I just want to talk about why going from a major 1 chord to a minor 3 chord sounds so sad. Just listen to this. I mean, that's just epically solemn. In contrast, listen to going from 1 to 6. It's certainly not bright or cheerful or any of that, but it's just not quite as tragic as that. And I think here's what it is. Two reasons. In the key of B flat, you have a B flat and an E flat. And when you go from B flat to D minor, even though you're not actually physically playing the E flat note at that time, I think that the specter of that E flat is sort of still haunting your mind. The phantom E flat. So it's kind of, even though you're not literally playing that, the D minor sounds dark because of that sort of imprint from the previous key signature. That has, in my experience, that has proven to be the case. And then the other imprint is from the actual note B flat, which when you move to D minor, that would have to move down to A, right? So it's the same figure from the melody, right? That half step descending figure. So I mean, it doesn't get any sadder than that. So anyway, a brilliant piece of harmony by Adolf Adam from the middle of the 19th century for O Holy Night. Now, third example, we're going to go back to the 20th century, back to some more jazzy stuff for a very, very bright and happy modulation that I'm actually going to go ahead and call the Christmas modulation. So take a listen to this tune. Etc. Did you hear that moment where there's just that shift that's so bright, so cheery, so jolly? It just makes me so happy. I don't know if it's possible to listen to that transition and feel sad. Well, humans are remarkable creatures, so I'm sure it's possible, but for me, that's just such a bright transition. it just feels like a sunrise, or I imagine like birds, flying off into the sunset, or it's just a very Disney, it's just very bright and happy, very innocent kind of transition. So, of course, this is Winter Wonderland. This one is by a guy named Felix Bernard. I don't know much about him, but this is a great song for sure. So let's listen to that transition and solfege what's going on. This one's a lot trickier than the other one. So, pardon me, here we go. So, mi, 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 re, 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 do. That's easy, right? 3 blind mice. Mi, re, do. Now, the next part, see if you can sing the next note without me playing it. Right, for in the meadow, right? It's in the meadow we can build a snowman. Did you get it? So now let's try to figure out what it is. Mi, 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 re, 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 do, in. So do, from do to in the meadow. That's a half step. So we're going down to the note T, all right? T. But now let's actually listen to where we're going from there. In the meadow we can build a snowman. We need to find the tonic in this sort of collection of new notes. Because I'll tell you this much, it's not in the original key. Pardon me. So, to find the tonic, you can use your intuition, but you're going to need to sort of confirm it with some actual, with some actual evidence. So, in the meadow we can build a snowman. The ending note of a phrase is always a good bet. Sounds like home to me, but let's take a look at the intervals. So, in the meadow we can build a snow. That's a good indicator. That's a half step. Build a snow. Build a snow. The only 2 places that a half step occurs in a major scale is between do and ti and fa and mi. 7/8 or 4/3. So if it's 7 and 8, then the upper of the 2 will sound like home, and the lower of the 2 will sound like tension, aka needs to be resolved. But if it is in fact 4/3 or fa mi, then the upper note will sound out of place or sort of needing to be resolved, and then the lower of the 2 will sound like it has landed in its home. So let's take a listen to what this sounds like. In this case, I hope you agree that it sounds like tension resolve, right? Away from home, home. It's not, here's what do ti sounds like, right? Do ti, do ti. This is fa mi. So if that's fa mi, then that does in fact confirm that fa mi re do, then that the end of that phrase was in fact do. And that if we have fa mi re and do, then we can continue down do ti la sol, and now we can sing this melody in the new solfege. Sol sol mi mi la la fa fa mi do. Okay. So the beginning of that melody is sol in the new key, but it used to be ti, as we determined, in the old key. So here's a general thing to keep in mind. If a particular note has a certain solfege syllable assigned to it in one key, and then a modulation occurs and it now has a different solfege syllable assigned to it, then the difference between those 2 solfege syllables, measured as an interval, is, of course, going to be the same interval by which the tonal center shifted. The only thing is it's going to go the opposite direction. So if this note was ti and now it's sol, that's down a major third. But that means that the key center shifted up a major third in order to make that relative shift happen. Because the note doesn't actually move. It's the tonal center that moves under it. So if it was the 7th in this key, and now it's the 5th, well, that means the key center must have moved up under it. So that's all a very complicated way of saying that in this case, the note B, which originally was the 7th of C, is now the 5th of E major. Okay? Now, why does this sound so bright? It's because E major has so many more sharps than C. So E major has 4 sharps, C has 0. So basically, F, C, G, and D are all becoming F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. So this whole collection is raising. Now that sounds very strange in and of itself, but the idea is right? A whole bunch of things just went up. As opposed to, listen to this. If I go from C to E flat, yes, the actual motion is literally up, like to the right on the piano, but you'll hear, because things are getting flatter, it's not going to sound as bright. Right? It's the fellowship theme. And the reason why that sounds really epic is because it starts in sort of a major sound, and then it goes up a minor third, so you get that, it's a bit darker, right? It's flatter, but it's epic. And then when you go back, so if it was dark going one way, it'll be bright going the other way, right? Because if we added flats, then we're going to take them away when we go back. So neutral, slightly darker, bright in comparison to what we just heard. And then etc. Back to Winter Wonderland. Here we're going up a major third, so we're adding 4 sharps. Now, I want to delve a little bit more into this for just a second. I think that this is the Christmas modulation. It actually comes up in a whole bunch of songs. I'm going to take a look at 2 more in this video. And I think it's the best modulation if you want to just have something bright and happy, just unequivocally positive. And I think that's because this is the highest number of sharps that you can add without running into some problems. And I'll show you what I mean. If you are a composer and you want to come up with the brightest modulation possible from, let's say, C major, the first thing you might think would be to add all 7 sharps. So you would go from C major to C sharp major. And that certainly would seem like a great idea because every single note is raising up by a half step. So let's listen to what that sounds like. I'll play it again. Now, it certainly has energy. I mean, it moves up. I'll give it that. But to me, it doesn't have the just unbridled joy of this. So, from here. And then in contrast, let's do the C to C sharp. To me, it feels very interesting. The emotion I have when I hear that is, okay, that happened. We went up a half step. All right. But it's not like, my emotion is not like, oh, yes. It's kind of like, all right, yeah, half step, okay. And I think that's because even though this is C sharp major, and harmonically, it's also D flat. So if you look at a circle of fifths, C sharp, well, no, I'll do it your direction because the video is reversed. So C's up here, C sharp is all the way around this way, 7 notches down. But the quicker way to get there would be going through 5 flats on the other side. So when you hear this modulation, your brain doesn't know whether it's C sharp or D flat. So I think your brain is just your brain is just a little bit confused. Like, I don't know, is it C sharp? Is it D flat? I don't know how to feel. It's kind of just meh. Because, like, yeah, it could be going up 7 sharps, but it also could be going down 5 flats. It's just very ambiguous. It doesn't have a strong emotional statement, at least in my opinion. So that one's not super great. Let's try 6 sharps. So that's from C to F sharp major. Wow. To me, the emotion that I get from that is Star Wars. If that's an emotion, the Star Wars emotion. Right? The outer space emotion. You know, that little joint that goes that's what's going on there. Very ambiguous, because when you go from C to F sharp, first of all, you're moving by a tritone, and also C's up here, F sharp is down here with G flat. So your brain doesn't know whether you're adding 6 sharps or adding 6 flats, or subtracting 6 flats or subtracting 6 sharps. It's just completely ambiguous. So I think that's why that sounds very outer spacey, because it sounds very foreign. You also recognize that sound from Holst Mars, from the planets, which we'll get into another time. So anyway, 7 sharps is out, 6 sharps is out. Let's try 5 sharps. That's from C to B major. Interesting. Very interesting. To me, that feels very epic. And I think the reason why it doesn't feel quite as bright is because C to B, is literally moving down a half step. So it has that little half step motif in it that we talked about earlier. So even though you're adding 5 sharps, it's kind of like it's got that intrinsic sadness based on the fact that it's literally each note is moving down a half step. Also, there's that same ambiguity where your brain doesn't know whether it's B or C flat. If it's C flat major, then we just lost 7 sharps, which is a big letdown, a big bummer. So C to B, it also sounds like a Phrygian cadence, like that, right? So it kind of makes it sound like do, ti, do in a minor key, which is definitely not bright. So when you hear this, you're kind of thinking of that, right? So that brings us back to 4 sharps. And I think that 4 sharps, so for instance, C to E, is the brightest you can get without that sort of tonal ambiguity. So right? I think it's just beautiful. And then, of course, also 3 and 2 and 1 sharps are also very bright, but just correspondingly slightly less so. So anyway, that's my in-depth analysis for that transition of Winter Wonderland. It goes from the key of C to the key of E. But listen to what happens actually in the second phrase. So in the meadow we can build a snowman. Let's see if I can remember the lyrics. Something about Parson Brown. Now listen to this. Tell me if you agree with me here. I don't think this is quite as bright as the previous one. Here's the first one. Okay, now listen to the second one. Not yet. Here it comes. To me, that feels more like one of those ones where it's like, oh, okay, we're doing something different. We're going somewhere else. But it isn't like, oh, joy, happiness. Oh, yes, thank you. It's kind of like, oh, that's what we're having for dinner. All right. You know? And that's because that one went up a minor third. So that's kind of like that slightly darker one that I was talking about earlier. The reason why the composer goes up a minor third is because once you've gone from C to E, you need to get back to C eventually. So the best place to go is to G. So that's a minor third up, and then back to C. Anyway, so that I'm calling the Christmas modulation up a major third. Let's listen to another example of that. Here it comes. Okay, now that one's a bit different. And the reason why... So, first of all, this is Sleigh Ride. It was originally an instrumental piece by Leroy Anderson. A really cool piece. We could do a whole video on this piece because the harmony in this piece is just unbelievable. But anyway, so in the commonly heard band arrangement, it starts out in B flat major with that, famous little sprightly little melody there. And then at the end of the B section, at the end of that A section, it goes into this really, really nice sounding, but very interesting B section. Sorry. Now, let's take a look at the solfege there. So, do, dee, da, da, da. Now, if you know what that solfege is right away, I applaud you, because it was very hard for me to figure this out when I first heard the song and when I first had to learn it. So do, that's a minor third down. That's la. Now listen to this. That's la, si, la, mi, right? La, si, la. So the C is just a quick passing tone. But listen to the chords. Does that sound like a home to you? It shouldn't, because it's actually neither the old home nor the new home. It's actually a path to a place. So that's a dominant chord. You hear that? Ti, fa. Hear that tension? Ti, fa, do, ti, sol, mi, la. Very jazzy melody, ends on la, right? So this modulation is kind of cool because it doesn't go immediately into the next key. The previous one in Winter Wonderland is what we would call a direct modulation, an unprepared modulation, where it just went C, E, no preparation. So it didn't go C, B, E. It didn't give you any warning. It just goes bam. Whereas this one, it sets you up with what we call a 2-5. So we're in B flat, and actually what it's going to do is it's from B flat, the 3 would be D. So if we're doing that Christmas modulation, we want to get to D. But instead of going immediately to D, like that, the composer, in this case Leroy Anderson, wants to set it up with a 2-5. So in D, the 2 would be E minor, and the 5 would be A dominant. And that's exactly what he puts there. So that's E minor, and A7 or A dominant. Then we get the D. So that fulfillment and that happiness and that like just beautiful feeling is gonna come right on this note, right there. Home. And the other cool thing is that the T, actually, the note T, in this case C sharp, holds out over the incidence of that chord, which gives you this really lush suspension. So it creates this major 7 sound. Na, 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 na. And then it goes ya, da, 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 da. So sort of, the melody sort of tugs at you a little bit. So, sorry. We're not home yet. Now we're home. Confirming cadence. Ready? This stuff is hard to play. Repeat the exact same modulation down a whole step. And then this little jazz, etc. So anyway, that's a different way of getting to the key of major 3 via a 2-5. Sort of a delayed satisfaction thing. Like, what's going to happen? Where is this going? Oh, thank God. it went to the key that I wanted it to go to. And last but not least, so we've done 4 examples thus far. Last but not least is the sort of most complicated one. And kudos to you for sticking with me for this video thus far. If you can hang with me on this one, then you win. This one is the Christmas song, and it features, again, the Christmas modulation. It's literally called The Christmas Song, but you might know it as Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire. This one is by Mel Torme and Robert Wells. I don't know too much about them, other than that they were, in that same era of Great American Songbook, 50s, 60s, writing for Frank Sinatra, Bobby Darin, all those great guys. Andy Williams, Bing Crosby. So anyway, let's take a listen to this song. This is probably my favorite song of the bunch. And just enjoy the beautiful harmony that happens in this piece. Now there is a bridge. The part I want to focus on, this song is so dense with beautiful harmony. I was sort of joking around with a couple of friends the other day. I said the modulations that happen in that A section is the most astounding series of modulations that has ever been foisted on the unwitting American public. I mean, it's so remarkable that these composers put so much harmonic density and lushness and complexity into a song that is perfectly singable. People sing this song. Thousands of people across the world sing this song all the time. And they have no idea that they just modulated into 4 different keys within 2 measures. Or not, maybe not necessarily modulated, but at least tonicized 4 different keys. I mean, it's just unbelievable the way that the artistry that goes into this. To get the masses, the general masses, to sing these modulations without even blinking is just an astonishing feat of musical artistry. So anyway, instead of me ranting, let's actually listen to the part. So the part that's the part I'm talking about is Yuletide carols being sung by a choir. Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows. It's not actually 4 different keys. It's 4 keys, but the last one's the same as the first, so I guess technically 3 different keys. But first, the first one that happens is the Christmas modulation. So don't pay attention to that. That's just some nice bass movement there. But the melody, check out the melody. Do, 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 re, mi, sol, la, ti, di. Right? I stopped doing solfege because I want you to figure it out. So from that note, da, da, da. Think about what those intervals are. Da, da. Whole step. I hope you can hear that. Da, da. And then da, 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 da. Half step. So we were on T, the note T. Da, T. Now if we keep solfeging this, it's going to be down a whole step. La. Down a half step to C, which is sharp sol, right? What's going on with that? Well, here's our half step. Remember, half step is saying like, I'm here, pay attention to me, I can tell you something important. So in this case, the half step, we need to decide again, is it do T, falling to T, which would be from home to tension, or is it fa falling to mi, from tension to home? Let's see. Well, if that isn't home, then I don't know what it is. So that is tension coming to home. Fa mi. It's not do ti. It's fa mi. So what that means, if this is mi and this is fa, then this is sol. But it used to be ti. So once again, we have ti going to sol. That's a shift up of a major third underneath that melody. Right? This is my hand motion for that. Same modulation as Winter Wonderland. So that's up a major third, the brightest modulation that I can think of. So just absolutely beautiful. Now listen to what happens next. So now this is me. Oh, by the way, I'm playing the song in C major. So we just got to E major with the melody being a G sharp. And it's the mi of E. So mi, mi. Now what's this? Kudos if you know what that is in terms of solfege. So this is mi, and this is up a whole step. What's up a whole step from mi? Not fa. If you said fa. Up a whole step from mi is fi. Again, fi comes up. Third time in this video. Usually fi, like we learned, goes to sol. Like this. Mi, fi, sol, right? Oh, that's in The Sound of Music. Oh, what does that remind me of? Oh, climb every, yeah. Climb every mountain, right? Perfect example. The other thing that we discovered is that it can sometimes be an indicator of the relative minor of that. So like in O Holy Night. So in that case, that would sound like this. Right? That's the O Holy Night modulation. But listen to what happens in this joint. So when I figured out what was going on here, I mean, my life changed. I became a completely different person. I mean, this is just so brilliant what happens here. So, in order to figure out what happens, we got to listen to what the melody does. So, mi, mi, fi. That feels like home, doesn't it? Let's listen to this. Da, da, that's a whole step. Da, da, half step, whole step, half step. Da, 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 da. What part of the scale does that sound like? Right? Sounds like that's the tonic, right? Sol, fa, mi, re, mi. Or, so there's do, right? But we just established that this note was fi of the key from a second ago. So let's listen. Mi, mi, fi, right? Mi, fi, sol from Sound of Music. But in this case, listen to what happens. Mi, mi. It becomes the sol of this next key. Sol, fa, mi, re, mi. So if fi became sol, that's going up a half step, which means that the key center went down a half step, which is supposed to sound very dark, but it doesn't. And the reason why, this is the most ingenious thing ever, the composer, instead of going directly down from E major to E flat, instead is going to use a 2-5. Let me straighten this piano out. Is going to use a 2-5 to get there instead. So we're going from E to E flat. The 2 of E flat is F, which is a half step up from E. So from E major, we're going to first go to F minor before going to the dominant chord B flat. That's the 5 of E flat, and then landing on that beautiful E flat. So here's what it sounds like in context. Now the melody goes up a whole step to what really would be A sharp if we were thinking in the key of E, but now becomes B flat, right? Enharmonic equivalence, am I right? So now listen to the chord. The chord moves up a half step to F minor, and you get that lovely sort of extended chord sound. I could do that all day. And I hope that you share kind of my love for that sound. So the composer has gone from C major up the Christmas modulation up to E major, and then using mi, fi becomes sol by means of this 2-5 progression. The composer then went down a half step to E flat, right? So that's now mi, so sol, fa, mi, re, mi. And then what happens? You think we're home, right? The amazing thing is how each of these chords really does feel like home. So even though we don't have time to do confirming cadences, it's pretty remarkable how in this short span, the composer really makes each of these chords feel like home without the confirming cadences. So I would almost be willing to call them real modulations, even though technically they're not. But when you get there, it's like, oh, duh, like that's where we're supposed to be. Weren't we in that key the whole time? That feels like home. Is that not where we've been the whole time? Like, no, that is not where you've been the whole time. And then again, here's the way I feel about this next part. I feel like that note, on that note, all the context just drops out. It's almost like a blackout. Like, it's just so nebulous, it's so unexpected that you don't even know what emotion to have until you hear the harmony that then comes under it. So I think this is like this broad pool. I sort of feel like this wonderful space, and then kind of thins to a point, to a line, and then it blossoms out again, sort of like that kind of situation. That's the way I hear this. So and then sort of another mini version of that. The emotions involved here are just unbelievable. So anyway, that last modulation, you've arrived at E flat. It feels like home, but it's not. It's actually the, let me see if I can say this correctly, the relative major of the parallel minor, so of the original key. So the original key is C major, the parallel minor of that is C minor, the relative major of that is E flat. That's where we are, and that's usually a good jumping off point for a nice bright modulation back to the original key. You're adding three sharps back or taking away 3 flats again. So this is going to feel very bright. Hear all those notes getting brighter? Anyway, that is the brilliance of The Christmas Song by Mel Torme and Robert Wells. I hope that you enjoyed that little selection as much as I did. So, skills that I'm hoping you can come away from this video with, using solfege to identify where your tonal center is and how it may have shifted at, a modulation point in a song. And then appreciating the artistry that composers put into these modulations and the different emotions that they can convey and how they can match that up with the textual meaning of the song. And then just, again, try to develop a relationship with these sounds. Up a major third, up a minor third, the Lord of the Rings one, right? The Star Wars one. What's that? A tritone. Going down a step. That's the Phrygian cadence. The O Holy Night. The sad, the tragic one. The more you listen to these and appreciate these, it just gives music so much more meaning. So anyway, as always, please send me any questions you have, any comments, anything to follow up if you want some more information on this topic. And that's all I have for you in this video. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful holiday season. And I will see you guys in January.